Hi, welcome again to Mrs. Calabash Cooks. I'm Maggie, I'm coming to my kitchen. It's a little bit smoky today, my fault. I cooked the simnel cakes yesterday and I have a cake tin which has a bottom which comes up. And normally I put a baking tray underneath to catch any fat or liquid that comes out. I forgot yesterday, turned the oven on today and we're smoked out, so I do apologise. Now today I'm working towards next Friday, Good Friday. To me, Good Friday is always a happy holiday. We don't do an awful lot of work on Good Friday. In fact, when the children were small, we used to plan our summer holidays on Good Friday. But if you like me, I do like to eat fish on Good Friday. Not always a heavy meal. So today I'm going to do a cream of salmon soup. This is a very traditional English recipe because we have a lot of salmon runs along the rivers in England, and at one stage they were really plentiful. So it's a very old English recipe, and please come with me and we'll start and enjoy. Now I've already peeled the potatoes. There's about 4 potatoes there. I know the recipe says 3 potatoes, but we have 5 hungry people which will be waiting for the soup after I've finished. And so I'm going to just saute the onions. This is 2 onions in here. A little butter. I do like to use butter when I'm cooking. Something like this. There we are. Something like this where you need the flavour. So we're going to just melt the butter. There we are. And gently saute the onions. Now when you're making soup, you need to cut up as small as possible because you need as many cut surfaces for all the flavour to come out. That's the difference between a soup and a casserole. A casserole, you want to keep the flavour in with the vegetables and the meat. So we'll just put those in there, just gently saute, and by sauteing it brings out the sweetness of the onion. And because we've got a light soup, I'm using a white onion or a yellow onion. Don't use a red onion in this. It would stand out and it would look awful. So we're just going to gently saute. We want to make sure that all the onion is coated in the butter. Now if you do have a problem with cholesterol, then you can use an oil. I would suggest using a light oil, a coconut oil or a grapeseed oil that doesn't have a lot of flavour, because an olive oil can give a distinct flavour, and the salmon is a very light flavour. And actually this morning, whilst that's just sauteing, I'm going to read this because I found this online this morning, and it's the smoking points for oil. Now canola and coconut oil you can heat to 400 to 450 Fahrenheit, that's 200 to 232 centigrade, and then we come down to grapeseed oil, which is what I usually use, and you can heat that to 400 to 455 Fahrenheit, 204 to 240 Celsius. Now there's a big jump to olive oil, and this is why we don't deep fat fry in olive oil. It's only 325 to 375 Fahrenheit, 160 to 190 Celsius. And then this is one which I'm starting to use a lot in cooking and in salad dressings, and also some of the cake recipes, and that's an avocado oil. That's 325 Fahrenheit or 160 Celsius. So you see, you can bring some of the oils up to quite a high temperature and not the other. So it's important to know which oil you're using. So you can see the onions have just turned translucent. That's as much as I want. And now I'm going to put the potatoes in. Again, I want some of that butter over the potatoes. Like that. Just cut them into about 1/2 inch pieces. I'm using a yellow flesh potato today because it's one of my favourite. Now the recipe said 4 cups of water. Now you'll notice here I've got a jug which is anything but water. We were having shrimps yesterday for supper, and I'd got some odd little bits of fish, frozen fish left in the freezer. So when you skin your shrimp, put them in a pan with a little water on and boil them for about 10 to 15 minutes, and that gives you some really, really good stock. So I did actually do that with the odd bits of fish. And today, when I skinned the salmon, I had the salmon skins left over. Excuse me. I had the salmon skins left over. So I just put a little water on those and boiled it, and the dogs will be delighted. So I'm going to put a bay leaf in. Oh, excuse me. These are nice fresh bay leaves. I bought them yesterday, and you see I don't buy too many at a time because they can go stale. When I lived in France, we had a bay tree literally in the garden, and you had to take the shears to it to keep it under control. So we're going to add the stock like that. I can always add a little more if it's needed. So we're just going to put the top on and bring that up to the boil, and whilst that's boiling and cooking, then we're going to cut up the salmon like this. Now, which knife do I want? We're going to cut the salmon. Now this won't take very long to cook at all, the salmon, because it cooks really, really quickly, and don't overcook it. This is frozen salmon, but I do have one piece of fresh salmon that I'm going to show you how to skin the salmon. Now you're going to say, why is she using that silly little chopping board? The reason is that my chopping board is a wooden chopping board, and this will go in the dishwasher. So if I'm cutting something else on here and somebody comes to the house and they've got a fish allergy, it's going to be sterilised. I'll put it on sterilise. Just be careful with people with allergies, because I had a friend who was so allergic to salmon. He was one of the cooking school coordinators in Orleans, and he couldn't even touch a piece of salmon, and he just used to stay out of the room if I was cooking salmon. Now, a knife. You will build a relationship with your knives. I know this sounds silly, but I can't work with a big chef's knife. My hands aren't large enough. I can only work with a small knife, and I'll show you some of the knives I've got here. You get to know your own knife, and as travelling around the world, my knives used to travel with me. excuse me, it's all the smoke. Let me just wash my hands. Now, I trained 1960, which is moons ago. And so these were my knives when I went to college, carbon steel. These are not the knives you use now, which is stainless steel. We don't use the carbon anymore because as you sharpen, then you'll get little bits of carbon come off. This is my original filleting knife, which was about that long. But you see, the blade is very, very thin. The end did break off. So I'll just remove those. So today I'm going to use this little knife as a filleting knife. And this is a piece of salmon, a nice piece of salmon, which the skin is on, the colour's good. Fish shouldn't smell fishy. It's not good if it smells fishy. And if you've got a whole fish, the eyes should be nice and bright. So what we do is just make a little nick there like that and hold on. I can't use a piece of paper. Just, and you press down as far as you can onto the board. And just take the knife all the way through like that. Now, I have got some skin on there. It doesn't bother me, but when I was at college, culinary school, I'm just going to take it off, we had a meal, and I unfortunately had the principal's table. She had 4 guests, and she called me over, Miss Allen, and there was a little piece of skin on the fish that was no bigger than that. And she called me out in front of everyone. So I remember that lesson. But I'm not going to bother with this because it's nice and fresh. But when we were at college and we skinned the fish, then the lecturer would come over and she wanted to look at your piece of skin that you'd done, and all things were let loose if you hadn't done it correctly. So we're just going to do that like that. The potatoes are going to take about 10 minutes to cook. So I'm going to slip this back into the fridge just to keep it nice and cool whilst the potatoes are cooking. Let's remove this. Wash my hands again. And we'll just wipe down the table to make sure that there's no juice on the table. My cloths are nice and clean. I have a very old cast iron pot, and I still do the old method. I actually boil my dishcloths and then hang them out to dry, and that gets rid of all the bacteria. I'm going to add a little seasoning. I'm going to taste that stock and add a little seasoning to the potatoes. We don't want to put too much seasoning in at this stage. Oh, that's the pepper. We need the salt. Just a little sea salt. And I'm going to use some lemon pepper today. Adds a nice flavour, and I don't want the dark of the black pepper. There we are. We can always add a little more afterwards, but we can't take it away. I think that needs a little more seasoning, because you could, the seasoning, if you add the seasoning at this stage, it penetrates the food. In my final exam, we had a 4-hour final exam, and I forgot to season the potatoes. And the examiner came over, tasted everything, and said, yes, very good. And she said, and who forgot to season the potatoes? I thought, how did she know? But the whole of when you just add the seasoning at the end, it sort of stays on the surface. When you add the seasoning as you're cooking, it penetrates the food. There is a different flavour, believe you me. That's better. That tastes good. So we'll leave that for about 10 minutes. Should we have a look and see if anybody's phoned in? Ah, I've got help. How do I know who's calling? Sorry, I'm new at this. How do I know who I'm? Well, I'll tell you why I'm using sea salt, because it's got a better flavour and it's got iodine in it, natural iodine, and iodine helps your gouter. In England, there's a place, there's a county called Derbyshire, and they used to have what's called gouter neck, and they had a thick neck, and that was lack of iodine. That was going back a long time ago. So why sea salt? The smell's really good. Yes, it's really good now that the smoke has disappeared. And hi to everybody out there. So please keep calling in, and I will do my best to answer you. As you can see, I bought a new iPad just for you, but I don't know how to use it, so help me. So whilst that's cooking, we're going to make the cheesy Palmiers. And this is just, instead of having bread with the soup, just have something nice and light and savoury that you can eat with it. And you can eat these just as an appetizer, as a snack. You can I'm making cheesy ones today, but you can put jam inside and make a nice sweet Palmier. And you can put two together and with cream, and that's really a nice dessert, or for afternoon tea, a goûter, as we used to say in France. Now, I've got a baking sheet, and you're going to watch and say, what's she doing that for? I'm just running a little cold water on the baking sheet, and for puff pastry, this creates steam and the pastry rises. I'm using bought puff pastry today. I can make puff pastry, but as chefs we tend to use the puff pastry. It takes forever to make puff pastry. You put little bits of butter on, fold it, seal it, turn it, put it in the fridge for half an hour. And you do this about 5 times. So this is a really easy way out, and it's good. And this is a puff pastry that is made with butter. And so we're going to just put some cheese on there. This is, I've grated this. This is just some cheddar cheese that I had in the fridge. You know, when you get to the end, a piece of cheese and sometimes it goes hard. Don't throw it away. Grate it, put it in a container and use it for cooking. It's got a much nicer flavour than buying the cheddar cheese, the cheese that's already grated, and of course it's a lot cheaper. Now I'm using a good strong cheddar cheese today because I like something that really has a strong flavour. There we are. And these are really, really easy to make. Just roll like that into the centre. Now, we're using puff pastry. It's frozen, so it's a bit of a, you have to watch your pastry, because if it's too frozen you can't use it. If it's too defrosted, it goes very, very soft and you have a trouble handling it. So we just need to roll it like this until the two meet in the center, like that. And then we just put it on there, just flatten it a little bit like that. I've got the oven on at 425. Just gently flatten. And these will take about 10 minutes max. We just need to flatten them like that. It is a little bit soft, so I'm having to be careful how I cut it. There's a little bit of cheese there, we don't want to waste it. Like that. And you see, that comes already. So you don't need a board, doesn't make any mess. So I'm going to put this in the oven 425. Ooh, look at that. We'll check those potatoes in a few minutes. Now, has anybody got any suggestions of what they like to do for Good Friday? Because I'd be very, very interested to hear. As I say, we always eat fish. It's always been something, it's a tradition that we eat fish. I rather like smoked salmon and bagels and cream cheese for breakfast to start Good Friday off, and then we follow through and have, yeah, I can eat fish all day. I'm just a fish bush. So please, I'd be really, really pleased to hear Oh, let's have a look. Homemade pastry is a nuisance. What is a palmier? A palmier is, now we were having this conversation before we started. Francois said it's a palm tree. I always thought it was like a heart, so I don't really know. We'll have to look it up on the internet and see what it says. I like to use Swiss cheese, yes, the flavour. It has to be a nice strong cheese. So whatever, I sometimes mix the cheeses because I have a little bit of Lancashire cheese, which is quite a strong cheese, some cheddar cheese, and so I mix the cheeses together. You know, whatever is at the end of the cheese, I use it and I grate it. No, you don't have to eat them straight away. You can store them in the fridge, but I would just put them in the oven for a few seconds, for a few minutes. They are better if they're warm. But obviously, if you're eating a sweet palmier, then you don't reheat. But a savoury is nice if it's warm. Yes, and we used to do the picnics, and a good stir fry with tofu. That's a good. That's a nice thing to have for Good Friday. Now, if I'm doing tofu, I like to have some curry powder, and just heat the curry powder in a skillet, and put some hard tofu, and just coat it in the curry powder, and then gently cook it, and then put it in with the stir-fry vegetables. I like to add a little bit of flavour to tofu because it is a flavour carrier. It's a carrier of flavours, whatever way you like to say. I see. I think, well, I'm liking your comments, and please keep coming. Let me know, because as you hear, I am not Canadian, and we have different customs. And one of the customs that we're going to talk about is a simnel cake, which is an Easter cake. But let me have a look at the potato soup, the salmon soup, see how that's going, and then we'll talk about the simnel cake. These are almost cooked. Let me just try one. This is cooked privilege. They're hot. They are cooked. They are really, really good. Now, I'm going to, because we don't want them to be, I'm turning this down, as you can see. We don't want the potatoes to overcook at this stage, because we're going to put the salmon in, and we've got to cook the salmon. And we don't want the potatoes to disintegrate. So, let's just put the salmon in. Oh, yes. Look at this. I'm always leaving my cloths around. Look, that looks gorgeous. So, let's just put these, we'll turn that up a little bit. I don't want the salmon to boil, I just want it to simmer. And then we're going to add to that, we're going to add a little wine and some cream. I'm going to add the wine now. Let me just add a drop of wine, and it will cook out. And this again is it's called Over the Ridge Chardonnay, and this is by Smoky Ridge again. It's a nice pale straw wine, and it's got fruit. You can smell the fruit and citrus. It really, really is nice. Goes extremely well with any fish and cheese. And this is a winery that's about 20 minutes, 3/4 of an hour away from here, towards Cornwall, in a little place called Mountain. There's not much in Mountain, but they have a really, really good vineyard. And the nice thing is that 15% of all sales goes towards the armed services, towards the veterans. And because Smokey's dad was in the army, and so was Smokey, go and visit. He's quite a character. And what I'm going to put in with the soup, now it's got to this stage, this is a jalapeno and maple coulis, and it's quite hot. This is by Naked Foods, Montreal. We try to support local manufacturers as wherever we can. I was a manufacturer, an international manufacturer, and it is nice when the local shops support you. And this is vinegar free, and they say medium hot. I'm not quite so sure. I think it's quite hot. And we get this is supplied to us by a firm called Chili's, and they have an incredible array of hot sauces. Everything from mild to really, really takes your head off. And they're in the Bayshore and Tangier outlets. And we were there tasting. Oh, I was tasting all these sauces. And by the time I'd finished, my head was going, whee! I thought it was coming off. And then he said, try some of these. Well, there were peanuts, spicy peanuts, which I'd had before. Derek took a handful. I took 2. And as he came down after he hit the roof, because they are really, really strong. So if you visit Chili and he asks you to try the peanuts, gently Bentley, as the saying goes, because they're really, really strong. I'm going to put a little of this in. And this has got, the reason why I like this, it's got jalapenos, it's made from maple syrup, but it's got fresh herbs and lime juice, a little olive oil and some fresh garlic. And it goes really, really well in soup. So just let me add a little at this stage. We can always add a little bit more. You see, I'm not putting too much in. I think I'm being a little, there we are. We could do with a little more. We've got quite a lot of soup there. And the potato does take away the flavour. You can see in that short time, the salmon is just about cooked. Almost cooked. The Palmiers are not quite ready. So we'll just put that up for a few more minutes. Now, if you're cooking salmon, this is always a debate, because you should really cook it so it's coral in the centre. A lot of people don't like it like that. They say no, we like it cooked all the way through. And I was assisting a chef in one night class, and he's quite a character, is David. And I'd cooked all the salmon, brought it out, and he freaked. It's got white bits on it. That's the milk proteins. No, I don't want it, it's overcooked. So I had to go down to the fish department, buy a whole load of new salmon and cook it so it was coral in the centre. He wouldn't eat it. He said, no, I'm not going to use it. So it's entirely up to you whether you like salmon well cooked or salmon that's coral. Ah, can you taste the wine for us? Certainly. I can always taste the wine. Look at it. It's a lovely, look, a nice sort of amber colour. That is a delicious wine. Actually, I've not tasted a wine from Smoky Ridge that I've objected to, and even his rosé is a 0 sugar. But that will go really, really well with the soup. That is just about cooked. Plonk. And I'm going to serve the soup in that to bring it to the table. It's nice, it's thick, and it's going to keep the soup warm. It's Easter. Let's go upmarket. I like the Easter holidays. It's not as frenetic as Christmas. We can sit back and enjoy. Let me just check the oven again. I need just to turn those around. They are almost ready. I think the oven is a little uneven. It's not quite level. And we're going to serve that in a minute, and then I'm going to do the simnel cakes. But we're just going to add a little cream to the soup. This is a 35% again. Turn that down because the salmon is cooked. There we are. That is enough cream in there. On the recipe, I said about using dill because the dill brings out the flavour of the salmon, but I hadn't got any dill. We live in the country. We went shopping yesterday. There was no dill, so I nipped down to the local store today and they hadn't got any herbs in at all. So I'm just going to add a little dry dill weed. You don't need a lot of dill, but just a little to bring out the flavour. So I'll just put some of this in. We'll take that top off. You see, that's what I'm going to put in, like that. We'll taste it again just to see if the seasoning's okay, and see if we need a little more hot sauce. I think we could do with a little bit more hot sauce. You can't really taste it. It's bringing out the flavour. There we are. That should be fine. We'll leave that on the pot just for the minute. There we are. You can smell when they're cooked. And there's the Palmier. So I'm going to have to move this. Yes, you can use milk instead of cream, but don't boil. Just gently simmer, because the milk could separate. It doesn't always, but sometimes it will. That's why we use a 35% cream. If you're in Quebec, then you can use, there's a 10% cooking cream that's excellent, but we don't have it over here in Ontario, which is unfortunate. I don't know why. I don't like big. Let me have a look. What have I got in here? the fridge was squeaking at me. I hadn't closed it correctly. So I'm going to put the Palmier on here. Let's get rid of all this lot. We don't need that. We don't need that. Now this, as I say, Easter's a time to rejoice and bring out the dishes that you probably don't use any other time of the year, apart from Easter and Christmas. And this is this belonged to Derek's nan. So it is rather old. It's English, and it's used on special occasions. And it's nice because it's got a handle, and you can hand the dish around. So let's just put some. Oh, these are really, really nice and fresh, and whoops. Now they look a little bit anemic, like that. So let's just put this over here. I've got some parsley. This is all washed. I did buy this yesterday. And you'll notice it's a flat parsley, an Italian parsley. And we always use this in cooking. The curly parsley is really just for decoration. This has got a lot more flavour. So let's just, there's a little hole there. I want to poke that in, like so. And let's just decorate the plate so that it looks pretty. Tuck it under. There we are. Now what I'm going to do is we need just to take these away. I'm using some rather nice china today, and I went into the local store. I couldn't resist these. Spring, yes. I keep going down the garden looking to see if anything's coming up. So we'll put a couple of Palmier on a plate, like that. We can do them that way. And again, just a little parsley to make it look pretty. Like that. Have a nice napkin with it. On the edge of the plate. Like that. And I'm going to put the soup in here. Let's just remove these. Now this is where the fun begins, because this is heavy and it's hot. Somewhere in there is the bay leaf. There we are. That's gone. And I need to take out all this lovely salmon and potato. This is quite a hearty meal. Let me just move this over here. Now, again, if I was taking this to the table, because if we haven't got any dill, I would just put a snipping of parsley in there like that, just to make it look pretty. But I'm going to There we are. So put the top on the tureen like that. Just clean your bowl. There we are. Clean the bowl, and there you are. That's a meal to serve. So that's the cream of salmon soup with the Palmier. I do have a problem with my iPad. It's telling me I've got a low battery and to close the iPad. If you don't like parsley, what other herb can we use? You could use a little cilantro, a little dill, some fennel in there would look quite nice. You know, something nice and green. Some basil. Basil isn't really a traditional English. Parsley, fennel, dill are traditional English herbs. But you can use anything you like. This is the nice thing about cooking. It's yours. You make it your own thing. A recipe like this is just a guideline. If there's something in there that you don't like, leave it out. If there's something that you really, really like and it goes, put it in by all means. You're not making a French gâteau. Cakes, gâteaux, it's chemistry and physics. Everything is balanced. But for something like this, the world's your oyster. It's yours. I'm just going to move this over here to get some space. Let me just, again, that's hot. There we are. And these can go over there. But it's nice to set the table for Easter. It looks nice. Have some little mock chickens on there. Yeah, some bunnies. So now we're going to do the simnel cake. A simnel cake it's a traditional Easter cake in England, and it's a fruit cake. But it's not a heavy fruit cake like Christmas. Christmas, the fruit is can be soaked in spirit, whiskey, rum, very dark. The simnel cake is a much lighter fruit cake. And you make the fruit cake, and halfway through, which you can't see, you can probably just see that band, that is marzipan. So it's a fruit cake with marzipan in the center, more mixture on the top, and it's not iced. We're going to put marzipan on the top there, and 11 marzipan balls that represent the 11 disciples minus Judas. And this is the only yellow ribbon I could find, so we need to put some yellow ribbon round, and to make it stick I'm just going to make a little glassy icing. So I've got that, icing sugar, and I want to make it quite stiff. So just some icing sugar and a drop of water in there. I just want to I've got some little Easter eggs I want to make sure that they're sticking on. And that's just icing sugar. I don't want to make it, there we are. Just stir it in. That needs some more icing sugar. And this is glassy icing. Now, simnel cake is traditionally eaten on Easter Day, and in medieval times this is very much an English tradition, but a friend of mine was brought up in Switzerland and they had simnel cakes as well. So there we are. And it's always eaten, I'm going to read this because I want to make sure that I get it right. It's traditionally eaten on Easter Day, and in medieval days, at the turn of the 17th century, female servants would bake this fruit cake, take it home on a rare visit to their mothers on Mothering Sunday, because they gave a simnel cake on Mothering Sunday, and that's always the fourth Sunday in Lent. And in England, it is still in Lent. It's the fourth Sunday in Lent. They've already had Mothering Sunday. It's not the same as here. And I want to skewer. So we're going to put some apricot jam on the top there. Just let me. I've got apricot jam and just a little water in there because the jam is a little bit thick and we just want it to stick. Just warm it slightly and that's enough. So we just put some of that on top like that. There we are. And we're going to roll out some marzipan. Now, which bit of marzipan is which? We'll talk about making the cake in a few minutes. I think they're both the same size. I'm not always the best at gauging things. I bought the marzipan yesterday, the other day rather. I didn't make it, but the recipe will be up for you to make the marzipan. I usually make it, I was feeling a little bit lazy, so I bought some. If you don't have ground almonds, then what I did, I had some almonds with the skin on. Just pour boiling water on them and let them sit and rub them with your fingers and the skin comes off, just to blanch the almonds. And then you can put them in a food processor and make ground almonds that way. You don't have to buy almond meal. I used that for some almonds in the cake. I had some skinned almonds. I blanched them. Now, roll out I could do this the easy way because here's my cake tins that I used. I didn't have an 8-inch cake tin, would you believe it? I've given all my cake tins away. I didn't think I needed them anymore. So let that be a lesson. Don't give anything away. We moved, we downsized. I thought, oh, I don't need these anymore. We don't eat much cake. And so we just need that like that. I want it to be just slightly larger. That's brilliant. And we're going to put that on the top there, like that. Now, it doesn't look very pretty. So just, I don't know if you can see it. Use these two fingers like that and that finger and pull these two forward and push that one back. And you can crimp pastry just the same way. Here we are, like that. Clean up the mess. We've finished with the icing sugar now. Let's get rid of that. Well, no, we haven't really, because we need to do 11 balls. Again, just needs working with the hand, just to soften it a little bit. Now, I've got to make these even, and that is a challenge. 2, 4, 8. Now, how am I going to do this? A little bit off there, a little bit off there. That gives me 10. A little bit off there. I should have 11 by the time I finished. Maybe all the disciples weren't the same size. Maybe there were some fat ones and some thin ones. So we're going to make these into a little ball, and I'm going to put a little icing on there like that. Let's just not be silly and work to see where they're all going to go. So the mixture that I gave you, the ingredients, makes 2 cakes for me. One this size, and I'll show you the other cake. But traditionally, it's an 8-inch cake. So when you make the marzipan, divide it into 3. So it's a third inside the cake, a third on top, and a third for your disciples. Let's see how many we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've only got 10, haven't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So we take a bit from you. Where did that one go? There we are. A bit there, and a bit there, and we've got 11. That one's a little disciple. And then we'll stick them down with just a little icing sugar. We always made this for Easter. It was a tradition, a bit like the Christmas cake. So there. So this icing will harden and it'll keep the disciples in place. And we've got some chocolate eggs, which we're going to put just in the centre there, and possibly around the board. I tried to get some little tiny decorated chickens, some chickens that you can decorate. We have them in England, but I couldn't find any. I looked all over. There we are. And I've got, look, we've got some, so again, choose the nice coloured ones. We'll put some yellow in there now. Some of the, whoops. Another yellow one. Ah, look, we've got two yellow together. We can't do that. We've got to squeeze. Not enough icing on that one. The icing's already setting. So that one in there. And we could just put some around the edge like that, which, let's get this on first. So we're going to put, now a lot of the, I'm just going to put a little blob on there to hold it in place. A lot of the simnel cakes have an egg topping. Now that's a beaten egg, so you wouldn't put your decorations on, you'd put the disciples on but nothing else and put it under the grill. But the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to go back here, I've got a skewer, I'm going to heat the skewer and just make a little cross on each one of those. So let's take this back over here. I'm lucky because I've got the gas and I can do this. So we're going to put the skewer in the gas to make it hot, like this. No, it's not hot enough. This is where you could do with 2 people. So we've got 2 skewers heating up. Like that. It's to represent the crown of thorns. Now, next week, everyone, it's going to be Good Friday, but we're still going to be shooting. And I'm bearing in mind Easter and people having friends and family around. So I'm going to give a couple of ideas to make a brunch without exhausting yourself. So we look forward to doing that next week. There we are. For Good Friday in England and Ireland, when I lived in Ireland, we always used to plant the potatoes. It was always the day to plant potatoes. You went to church in Ireland, early mass, and then you went home and you planted your potatoes for the summer. We'd be lucky if our ground, if all our snow's gone by next year, by next week. There we are. Some are a little browner than others. They can always be touched up. There we are. One more to go. Just one more to go. The skewer cools down quite quickly. It's best if you have a couple of skewers on the go. There we are. Turn that off. Just clean off the board, and we put, let's just put they're going to roll. This is what the children like when you pick it up. It's a free-for-all. Just a few round the edge, higgledy-piggledy. No, that one's gone. There we are. And that, everyone, is our Good Friday supper or lunch. I hope you enjoy it. And please join us again next week for Mrs. Calabash Cook. And I look forward to seeing you. And please keep writing in. Let me know what you think. Any ideas, any comments, I'd be more than happy. And I'll try and answer all your questions. That's all for tonight. Bye.